What is up, my friends? How are we? You are very welcome along to this interview special on Anfield Agenda. I sat down with David Lynch to go through the latest with Liverpool's summer transfer business. We did, of course, discuss Mohamed Salah, Trent and Virgil's contract situations and so much more over the course of our interview. I'm not going to hang around. I'm going to get you guys get straight into it. But don't forget, do let us know your thoughts in the comment section. Drop a like on the video if you enjoy it. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button. All of David Lynch's information will be in the description of this video, so please do go over, check out his YouTube channel and all of his great content on his Substack as well. Without any further ado, let's get straight into it. David, it's absolutely lovely to have you here on the channel, mate. We appreciate your work. We've been admirers for a long time. How is the summer treating you?
Yeah, sound not too busy from a transfer perspective so far. I've been kind of quiet, not too much knocking around, but good to meet the new manager the other day, and that was cool, and to felt like progress really into this kind of new era that Liverpool are moving into. So yeah, that was a good moment, and yeah, there's a lot to look forward to, isn't there? Because I'm sure it will heat up a little bit in the transfer market, and as I say, pre-season's coming under the new manager, so great to see how he works and learn a little bit more about him. So yeah, a lot to look forward to.
And how did you find Arne Slot's first press conference? What were your impressions from the first time you got to speak with the man?
Yeah, I thought, I know the cliche is always to say they spoke well, didn't he? But I genuinely did think he came across really well, and wasn't trying to be the new Jurgen Klopp was. He was just very much his own man, and he's going to have his own style. And I thought, there's a couple of moments as well after questions where he showed he's got strong opinions as well. I thought, think about the stuff about the formation or the stuff about Gakpo and Trent's position. He clearly is. He's got strong opinions on these things. He knows his own mind, and he speaks with confidence about them. So yeah, I thought he was as impressive as you can be. But obviously, you only know it's all about the results, isn't it? At the end of the day.
It certainly is. And look, I want to speak to you first about our captain, Mr. Virgil van Dijk. Obviously, a heartbreaking evening yesterday for him over in Germany. It's a final for England, but Virgil comes home with a heavy heart. And his comments afterwards have obviously got many Liverpool fans a little bit concerned. What was your take on what Virgil had to say?
Yeah, to be honest, I think really in that, I think he's hinting more about thinking about his international future, to be honest, and the viability of playing regular international games when he's playing at such a high level at his club and he's getting a little bit older. Maybe he's having to think about that. But in terms of his future at club level, I mean, I've always got the impression, and he speaks to us quite a lot in the mix zone. Virgil, he's really sort of generous with his time, so we do get to speak to him most weeks at Anfield and I've always got the impression when we've spoken to him that he very much wants to extend his stay, that he wants that new contract. So that's very much my understanding. So I think I didn't read into it in a sense of he's thinking about leaving Liverpool or anything like that. I think he's desperate to get that contract, and I think it's one that Liverpool as well will be confident they can do, because I just think even he's getting on a bit in football terms, isn't he? But I think for a centre half, they can play a little bit longer than you'll maybe squeeze a bit more out of them than you do forwards. And I think he's a player with such great experience and sort of brilliance in his defending that even if he starts to lose a yard over the next year or so, I don't think it will cost him too badly. I still think he'll be an absolutely top class defender. So yeah, I'm not worried about that one. I think that's one that will get resolved.
I have to say, I totally agree with you. And the statistics last year backed up the level of performance. It felt like Virgil was finally back to the Virgil that we knew before that ACL injury. But that's just one of three players, David, that we're a little bit concerned about as Liverpool fans. Obviously, Trent Alexander-Arnold is the main one for me. He's away with England at the moment. Jude Bellingham there with him. We know how these international camps work. What's your take on the latest with Trent and that contract extension?
Well, yeah, not too worried about that in terms of Jude Bellingham getting in his ear, because clearly it didn't work when Trent was trying it in reverse and trying to get him to Liverpool. So I'm not too worried about that one. But I think, yeah, no doubt that I think Liverpool, it's a consequence, isn't it, of not having a permanent sporting director in place, and that structure there in recent years. It's kind of cost them around the contract situations, and they've got themselves into a little bit of a corner with quite a few of those players. And Trent's probably the best example, because I think he's the most important in terms of signing up. He's got his best years ahead of him. He's a future captain, no question. So they really do need to get that one wrapped up. But again, I think Liverpool will clearly, with this one, the negotiation is difficult in that it's going to be an absolutely mammoth contract that's going to put him in amongst those top earners, isn't it? It's going to be a huge contract, no doubt about that. But again, a player who he's spoken himself about wanting to be Liverpool captain in the future. He's been given that role of the vice captaincy. And this new era is coming in now where you've got Michael Edwards back at the club. There's a bit more structure. Richard Hughes is in place now. So I think the signs are positive, but I think Liverpool will have regrets about leaving it this late, because it does always open up that question of, will he wait to go on a free? Will Real Madrid try the hand and try and tempt him? But again, all the messaging from Trent has consistently been that he wants to be a Liverpool legend. So I think if the money's right, and I think that, again, they've no reason not to, they will pay the top money to top players when they're in the right age bracket. One that you would be confident will get sorted out. But hope he's got to wait till the tournament's over and he's back, and then it can all get sorted over the summer, hopefully.
Do you think there's a little bit of brinksmanship going on between their agents, Trent, Mohamed Salah and Virgil, to see who blinks first? Because obviously there'd be a precedent set. If Trent, as you've said, comes in and signs a new contract, giving him the money that I absolutely believe he deserves, future Liverpool captain, and this season in particular, I really felt like Trent came back a grown man, if that makes any sense. He looked like he was more reassured in himself and ready for that leadership role. So I wonder, is somebody just waiting to see who blinks first in this with regards to the agents and obviously the club?
Yeah, I've no doubt that's part of it in terms of, everybody. It's a big part of all contract negotiations, is sort of benchmarking really and saying, where's this contract going to put me within the squad? Where does it say you value me? I think what works in Liverpool's favour, as I say, is I think with the Trent one, they just know it's going to have to be massive. It's going to have to be sort of not too far away maybe from the Mo Salah money that they're offering there. I think that's the reality of it. But I think this is one of the things actually about, because they've left it to this point, I think the Salah one is a particularly difficult contract negotiation, if I'm honest. I just think there were signs of decline there last season. I still think he could be incredibly useful this season. Don't have to say useful. He'll probably be Liverpool's primary source of goals again, to be honest. But I just think he's on such big money at the moment. Those small signs of decline were there. I think there's a big risk there for Liverpool that they won't like, and I think especially with Michael Edwards back and that being, setting up really how they sort of approach these situations. There's just a major compromise that has to be made around the money, because Mohamed Salah's not really going to want a pay cut, is he? And I think Liverpool are going to say, well, ultimately we're not going to be probably getting the same level of performance as we did over the length of this contract. So they would probably like to bring that down. So again, I think that's a really tricky one. And I've said this before, but I think of the three, it's the one I kind of find the hardest to imagine him signing. I mean, no question he'll be there next year, because he'd never push for a move when he's in the final year of his contract, because he'd be leaving money on the table for himself. So it'd be madness to do that. So no doubt he'll be there next season, and there won't be a sale or anything like that. But in terms of what happens beyond that, I think it's the biggest question mark of the three contract situations. The one I'm least confident will get resolved with him staying at Liverpool, to be honest.
Do you think that there's any potential regret at not taking the offer that came in from Saudi last summer? Because I have to say, I'm somebody who this summer fully expected Mohamed Salah to be sold. But last summer, I have to say, David, I was certainly in the camp of reject any offer that came in and let's see how he gets on. So maybe I'm a bit of a dreamer here, but I've always had this vision that maybe Rami Abbas and Liverpool could come to some agreement that he is sold this summer, and maybe half of the transfer fee or something goes in Mohamed Salah's pocket, because as you rightly pointed out, he knows there's a huge sign-on on fee coming if he departs Liverpool at the end of his contract.
Yeah, I don't think they'll have regrets over last summer, to be honest, because of what it was worth to them to keep him. And it was clear in that moment. I remember I wrote a piece about this at the time, actually saying, look, Liverpool will need him to get back in the Champions League. That was the number one aim of last season. He played a massive role in that, and Liverpool won a trophy last season as well. So it clearly there was value in that. It pushed that rebuild over the line, didn't it? He was there. They changed so much in midfield, but they had that consistent source of goals in Salah, and that got them back in the Champions League, which is what they needed. The financial rewards of that have set them up perfectly now for into this new era with Arne Slot. So I think it was a bit of a no-brainer to keep him. But as you say, it's a difficult situation now in that you can't really force him to go. You can't force the sale, and I think everybody accepts now, regardless of what happens with the contract, he is going to stay, and that obviously does have some financial implications. But the end of the day, I think Liverpool stared that down last summer and said, well, that would still be worth it. And again, they don't mind losing players on free transfers, do they? If they feel like they've got value out of the contract, and we've seen it with so many players in recent years. So I think, again, even with Salah, even with leaving a little bit of money on the table, not selling him last summer, I still think they would think it was worth it. And the same will be the case if he leaves on a free in the coming summer.
I know those three players we've spoken about, Trent, Virgil and Mohamed Salah, are the big contract renewals. But Miroslav Yoros is another interesting situation because he's into the last year of his contract as well. We've seen that Adrian San Miguel's departed for Real Betis. And I've always liked the idea of Yoros making that step up. What do you see happening there between himself and Caoimhín Kelleher?
Yeah, it's an interesting one with Yoros, isn't it? Because I saw the reports suggesting that at the moment he is very much going into the season as third choice. But again, I kind of be interested to see what his perspective on that was. Really, having gone out on loan and had such success and played regularly and got those minutes under his belt, would he prefer a bigger role than that? And is there a possibility that there's a potential promotion to second choice there in the event that Caoimhín Kelleher leaves? Now that, I think we all sometimes assume that that's a done deal now, that Kelleher will go this summer, because Liverpool would be open to the idea of letting him move on to play more regularly. But it's still, clubs have got to come up with the money, and the money's got to be right. So that's not a done deal. But if that were to happen, does that allow you to say, maybe promote Yoros if they think he's ready to do that? Maybe they will know, they see him in training, and then get yourself a more experienced third choice goalkeeper as an alternative. So that's an option that's open to Liverpool. I'll be really, I think the player's stance in terms of how much he wants to play, whether he wants to go out again, that will have a big say in that. So that's really interesting. But it's, again, what will work all that out is if a club comes in for Kelleher, and like I said, the money has to be right. Liverpool are looking at 25 million plus to even come to the table, which again, I think is a fair valuation when you see some of the prices that other goalkeepers have gone for in recent summers. So I think that's the right approach, but it has to, you've got to wait for that to happen first. And there's not been any sort of concrete moves for Caoimhín yet.
It is an interesting one, and I highly rate Yoros as well. As a former keeper myself, and as an Irishman, obviously I'm invested in Caoimhín. But as you've said, he probably, the worst thing that could have happened for us is how well he performed last season in the second half of the season, because it makes it more difficult to take that number one spot away from him. He's so used to playing. He performed really well, but we know Alissons the best goalkeeper in the world. So I appreciate your answer on that one, David. We've been constantly linked with a wide forward, and it's rather surprised me, because if nobody's going to depart the club, are we looking perhaps to the future for a Mohamed Salah long-term replacement? I mean, Frimpong is a name in the last couple of days that's been mentioned in the media. Is there anything to that?
I've not personally not heard anything about the Frimpong one, and again, kind of maybe slightly skeptical about that one, to be honest. But I think there's been a clear, I think there's quite a few profiles out there that we've noticed have been consistently linked, which is that kind of left-footed right winger. Liverpool getting, clearly, at least at the very least, having a look in that market, and I think, as you say, it does look a lot like succession planning. I think this Mohamed Salah situation, as I said, it's a really difficult contract to sort. And I think Liverpool will be thinking there's every likelihood that they come to the end of next season and that hasn't been sorted out. And they're losing Mohamed Salah on a free, and they need someone to come in and step in on that side. Now, the big question is, do you wait till next summer and you get, you really high profile one and you bring in, or do you get someone now who's maybe a year or 2 years away from really hitting the level, but allow them to work with Salah to be part of the squad? There will be slightly more games next season as well, so that option's there. So, and again, we've seen a lot of Harvey Elliott being used out on that right-hand side as a backup at times, and I just don't. I think with how good his performances were in the centre of the pitch at the end of the season, I just don't think you want to be putting him out of that right wing anymore. And I think it's something that that Liverpool are definitely looking at the moment. But again, it's kind of spinning plates and working out how things are going to fall, because so much is contingent on what happens with contracts or who else leaves in the squad. Again, we know that Luis Diaz interest is there. So again, they may end up thinking they need a left winger as well eventually, because there's going to be a spot open up. Does that open up the possibility of going back in for Anthony Gordon because of his contract situation at Newcastle? That is, that possibility is there. But I think so much, and I think this is true of Liverpool's business in general this summer, is a lot of it's contingent on things that currently aren't in Liverpool's control at the moment. But I think it's kind of going to be like dominoes in terms of if something happens. For example, Kelleher leaves, you start to see movement there. Maybe a club comes in for Tsimikas and he thinks he wants to play more football next summer. These kinds of things, they will start things moving in terms of what Liverpool are doing in the squad. But I would say, the important thing to remember is numbers-wise, Liverpool aren't too bad at the moment, but it's all about adding quality in the right positions when the places in the squad open up. And I think that's kind of the name of the game this summer, really.
I think, Richard Hughes did say that he expects, I think in general, like a bit of a crescendo in August for the transfer business. I think he meant right across Europe. But Anthony Gordon, do you think we'll hear this name mentioned again over the summer? Because it was a very interesting proposition, to say the least.
Yeah, I don't think that story's over. And I know, obviously, Newcastle, there was that time constraint there, wasn't there, with the PSR, and that has now passed, and Newcastle are okay in terms of that. But by all accounts, Anthony Gordon has a contract till 2026, which, on one hand, is madness, by the way. That means he signed a 3.5-year deal when he signed from Everton, which why Newcastle would allow that is beyond me. But it was in the reporting at the time that was the length of his contract. So, a strange one with that. I've seen some suggestions that there may be a clause in there in terms of if Newcastle were to get in the Champions League this season, that maybe Anthony Gordon will have an extra year that they can add on as an option. So that would protect them. But obviously, lots up in the air about that. So Newcastle are quite exposed, really. And so that, to me, is why maybe that story is not over, because Liverpool and every source I talk to at Liverpool absolutely love Anthony Gordon, love everything about him. He would love to play for Liverpool. He's clearly a boyhood fan, even though he didn't want to admit that when he played for Everton. So there's a lot of the ingredients there. And I think, because his contract situation is as it is, and there's only 2 years left, Newcastle's hand could be forced. You think towards the end of the window, if Diaz were to leave, if Barcelona came up with the money, if Liverpool were to go to with a decent offer in for Anthony Gordon, then and Newcastle might think, well, look, we risk running this contract down too low. We're losing him for basically nothing. We could use that money to reinvest in the squad. I think there's a real possibility of that being reignited sort of later in the window, but it would obviously, I think it would require Luis Diaz to leave. And again, that is, massively reliant on maybe Barcelona coming up with money that they might not have.
I hear you, and I agree with most of what you said, to be honest. I have two quick fire ones for you to finish up, David, if I may. Costas and Ait-Nouri. Do you think we're going to see some movement around that? We've seen lots of talk of Ray and Ait-Nouri. Obviously, I believe represented by the Guest of You agency as well, who we have good relations with, from, I think, Fabinho previously, Darwin, Diogo Jota now. Do you think that there could be a situation this summer where a bid tempts Liverpool into maybe listening to an offer for Costas?
Yeah, I think with Tsimikas, I think it's, he's got a decision to make this summer. Again, I don't think it's going to be a situation where Liverpool are kicking him out the door, but he played so little towards the back end of last season once he was fit again that he must surely be thinking at his age now, maybe he would want to play a little bit more now. As I say, nothing concrete on that. I know, certainly from the players' camp as well, it's not a situation that's being actively considered at the moment, but I do think, again, like Richard Hughes said, in terms of later in the summer, things will start to get moving. If a club comes in for Tsimikas, he might just have a decision to make. And that, again, could prompt Liverpool into the market. And I think Ait-Nouri is an interesting one. I think he's a player that clearly is admired in terms of whether that progresses to anything or he's on the list for the summer if Tsimikas were to leave because of, Robertson's age and the fact he's been picking up a few injuries recently. Maybe he fits that profile. I don't have concrete information on that one, but I would say, again, it is so reliant on Tsimikas maybe leaving. And right now, at this very moment, that's not something that's an active consideration, but it could be later in the window. And it's just one of those that I would just say to kind of keep an eye on, because it's all about, how his meetings with the manager goes, how his plans out, and just how much football he wants to play next season and whether he thinks he's kind of completed it at Liverpool. So, there's a lot going on really in this early part of the summer, a lot of conversations happening, and I totally agree with Richard Hughes on the basis that it's probably going to get busier as it goes on, because there's an awful lot to resolve across an awful lot of squads across Europe. So yeah, that Tsimikas could be one of those that happens in that late flurry.
And the last one I have for you is probably a question you've been asked 1,000 times, but with this transfer window, and with every transfer window, is it true that Liverpool doesn't so much go into it with a budget, but takes things on a case-by-case basis for each individual deal?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you could see that, couldn't you, from last summer alone? The fact that Caicedo bid went in, which was absolutely ludicrous sums, and obviously, Liverpool, it is, they're in such a healthy position off the pitch, and I've written about this quite a lot. Really, they are, you have to say, quite well managed, really, in financial terms. I know there is some frustration about maybe not spending enough in the transfer market, and I think at times that is a fair criticism. But I think that they're always in a position financially that if that world class defensive midfielder, and again, I'm not a scout, so I couldn't tell you who would be the absolute answer at number 6, who would be the right player to sign there. But if that player came up and it was the perfect profile and they knew it would solve all the problems, they would have the money to do that deal. But it is, as you say, it's just reliant on the right options being there. They never want to pay over the odds, and they're very sort of stringent about that. So, but yeah, the money is there if they want to do it. But of course, whether they do it or not is up to them. And we know what they're like around transfers and sort of very exacting about it. So we'll have to see how that plays out. But they've got no sort of excuses in terms of the money not being there. That's for sure.
David, it's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you. And I know you've launched your own YouTube channel over the last year or so as well. Is there any other little bits and pieces that you'd like to let people know about?
Yeah, so obviously you can find me on YouTube, David Lynch LFC, but I'm on the same on all social media as well. But I've just launched a Substack recently as well. So if people want to subscribe to that, that's where all my news and analysis is going to be going forward. So I would really hugely appreciate people's support if you want to check that out on Substack.
David, it's been a pleasure, and we hope to catch up with you again over the summer. Thank you for taking the time out of your day to have a chat with us.
Thanks for having me.